It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting through my website, emailrevealer.com. You just contact me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Our archives are free at Spreaker.com. I do a live show there Friday nights. There's a chat room, and you get an email notification when we put up new content. And if you go there and Google Ed Opperman, Spreaker, Opperman Report, Casey Gain McCalla, you will have... he's like the Steve Martin of the Opperman Show. More times, he's been a guest on the show more times than Steve Martin's been a guest on Saturday Night Live. Mr. Casey Gain, are you there, my friend?
Yeah, what's going on, Ed? How you doing today?
I'm doing good, man, and it is good to have you back. You know, it's good. You always bring the goods. You always do. Remind the audience.
Thanks for having me, too. You always have great questions.
Well, thank you. And remind the audience, who is Casey Gain McCalla, and about your book, too, about the CIA secret war in Jamaica.
Well, Casey Gain McCalla is an investigative journalist, so that's why I'm here. But I am also an artificial intelligence animation content creator, so I do a lot with AI and even with like the ethics of AI. So I have a recent video that deals with the 10 AI commandments, how to stop us from getting to the AI apocalypse, like, robots can't kill, steal, lie, spy, manipulate, and they should be used for the environment, they should be used for healthcare, education, etc. So I guess investigative journalist, technologist / AI animator, content creator, semi-retired rapper, and author of Inside the CIA's Secret War in Jamaica, which really got me into investigative journalism, as it really is. Because before I was a journalist, but I might have been like more of a publicist for the Obama administration, or someone who just regurgitated a lot of the news that was already out there. But definitely writing that book, I recommend everyone read it. Not only to learn about what the CIA does in Jamaica and how they oppress third world countries, but also about how they oppress Americans, how they assassinate their own presidents, how they sell drugs to their own people, and definitely read the book. If you already know about how awful the CIA is, it's a nice little refresher. If you're looking into some insight into the political history of our intelligence agencies, I highly recommend my book, as well as books by Russ Baker, David Talbot, and several others. There's a lot of really great books that should read on the JFK assassination. I think mine aggregates a lot of them. Yeah.
And Casey, what about the new podcast?
So I have a new show called Reality Theory, and it deals with current events. A lot of it, like I talk about deep politics, to quote Peter Dale Scott, not Donald Trump. So we deal with the JFK assassination, MLK assassination, and recently we try to bring up some new incidents. So I had a friend of mine who I believe was falsely arrested for killing his wife, and it's a really crazy scandal, and we can get into that one again because there's a whole new layer of corrupt cops. The cops who arrested my friend were really corrupt, and they're involved in another crazy case. Involves Karen Reed and this interesting guy called Turtle Boy. I'm gonna send you this guy. This guy's a character. You should have him on.
Okay.
And you should definitely have him on. I'm not going to co-sign him as a character, but he's a really good investigative reporter, and he's a bit of a nutcase, but his case ties into the Brian Walsh case. As I said, I also talk about AI and the future of humanity and robots and issues like that. I talk about how the CIA influences video games like Call of Duty. Talk about how Joe Biden is a racist person who gave Strom Thurmond his eulogy and was so buddy with Strom Thurmond before he died. He was the most notorious white supremacist. Now Joe Biden is claiming white supremacy is the biggest threat to our nation, and why were you enabling Strom Thurmond? So it's a lot of it deals with deep politics. I try and keep it fun, interesting, and current while historical. But like my first episode, I really do a really deep dive into the JFK assassination. So I highly recommend everyone watch the first episode of the JFK assassination, and from there you kind of see like the patterns and the cast of characters kind of repeating themselves from the JFK assassination to Iran-Contra, Watergate, so even what's going on in the world today. The kind of continuation of that milieu.
Yeah, you tagged me on that. You were mentioning the new HBO Watergate series with Woody Harrelson. I tell you, man, because St. John Hunt, we did become friendly. He's been on the show many times. We did become friendly. I reached out to him a couple of times about coming back on. I haven't heard back. But it is kind of disturbing, to see someone being portrayed on TV, and then you see, what he believes, and I believe too, is that the murder of his mother, Dorothy.
Well, that's on the last episode.
Right, I saw it.
I understand. I saw St. John Hunt's post about the show as well. I'm friends with him on Facebook, and I understand where he's coming from in terms of, they did make his dad look like a buffoon, and also see Gordon Liddy. It's very much a comedy, but I think that's the only way they could do it, because it is a running kind of gag throughout the whole series that E. Howard Hunt was involved in the JFK assassination. And if anyone is familiar with his confession, with his trial of Mark Lane and the Liberty Lobby, 100% that E. Howard Hunt was involved in the JFK assassination. But it's something the mass media will never, ever mention. So I like the show because of that. I think that the actress who plays Dorothy Hunt also plays Cersei on Game of Thrones. I think she's really good. I think Woody Harrelson and the character who plays C. Gordon Liddy are all really good actors. But I could definitely understand the trauma of even I think I might even tagged him on it. I shouldn't have when I first saw it. I can understand the trauma of losing your mother and your father being implicated. His father went to jail too. That had to be a bit traumatic. Yeah. And kind of how his father kind of took the fall for the CIA, really, you know what I'm saying, with the Watergate break-in. He didn't snitch, he didn't tell on anyone. If he was a gangster rapper, he'd be commendable, but unfortunately the CIA is involved in the assassination of JFK. But at least he gave a somewhat of a deathbed confession. I don't think he implicated his buddy Allen Dulles or Prescott Bush in it, but he named a lot of the other important names.
Yeah, St. John Hunt talks about how William F. Buckley came in and scooped up his family, the kids and his sister and his brother and stuff like that. Right. Yeah, and that he was CIA. Very interesting connection there.
So there's a new Showtime about, is it William F. Buckley, who was the ambassador in Lebanon or CIA station chief in Lebanon, who was captured?
No.
Because there's a new Showtime series on that. That's his brother, right?
I'm not familiar with that at all. No, I'm not familiar with that at all. William F. Buckley was the talk show host. It was famous.
Right. So William F. Buckley, the talk show host, also had a brother who was a CIA station chief in Beirut, and he was captured, and this kind of led to Iran-Contra a little bit. I think he was captured by Hezbollah, and this is why I really don't trust Tucker Carlson when he starts talking about the CIA and the JFK assassination. And his son's name is Buckley. And both Buckleys were super CIA guys, and Tucker famously applied for the CIA, and they didn't let him go. They didn't let him in, a journalist, or maybe they did let him in, and he became a journalist. Okay, so I don't know. I don't trust Tucker, even though I was glad he brought up the JFK assassination really, and has got against vaccines, but I definitely think he's opposition control agent, or was that controlled opposition?
Yeah.
And I think that they're going to try and have him dive deeper, like the conspiracy world, now that he's off Fox and saw his right. But I definitely think he's controlled opposition.
Yeah. One last thing about this Watergate show is the way they portray Frank Sturgis as this silent, guy. He had such a big personality. I can't believe he didn't have more of a leadership role. Yeah.
It's interesting because my friend Hamish Linklater was in Gaslit Show, which was also about the JFK, but focused more on who was the woman's name that Julia Roberts played in that?
I know what you're talking about. Martha Mitchell.
Yeah,
Martha Mitchell.
Martha Mitchell, right? So he was in a series where Martha Mitchell played, and E. Howard Hunt had no presence in that. So I think it's too much. Like, if you might have to do a whole show on Sturgis. I think the show is like a Hunt and Liddy show, and Sturgis is secondary. Yeah, I barely noticed him. He just seems like one of the other Cubans. Yeah.
Yeah, Sturgis later on was involved in Iran-Contra. So now according to his nephew, I believe. Anyway, the reason we had you on the show is about you just did this great YouTube video here for your podcast. The Chris Tucker, Michael Jackson, Jeffrey Epstein connection. What do we have there? What do you want to tell us about this?
Well, Chris Tucker has been really quiet really since he started hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein, Bill Clinton, and Michael Jackson. He had an enormous start a great start to his career. He was on Def Comedy Jam, and I thought this guy was the most amazing comedian in the world. He was in this movie Friday, which was one of the best comedies, not even just African-American comedies of all time. And he just had the most potential I've seen as an actor since Eddie Murphy, Will Smith. Like, I really thought this guy was going somewhere. His movie Dead Presidents, he played a homeless veteran, drug addict, very convincingly. And I thought he was going to have this amazing career, but he's really had a pretty awful career post Rush Hour 2. He was in this movie Air with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, and it's basically a really big Nike Air Jordan commercial for the sneaker. Okay. It's not really, yeah. I mean, if you're an Air Jordan fan of the sneaker, you might want to watch it, but it's not really a great movie that you're going to want to break a 20-year silence to come out of. And yeah, and Michael Jackson's back in the news. There's actually a new podcast by a homie of mine, Jay Smooth. It's only on Audible, unfortunately, and I can't get the name right off, but the host is Jay Smooth, and it's actually looking at his allegations, and it's been around the news. And of course, Jeffrey Epstein's been in the news recently because of the Bill Gates controversy, where Jeffrey Epstein was sexually blackmailing Bill Gates because he knew of an affair that Bill Gates was having with a bridge player, a Russian bridge player, who Jeffrey Epstein also cultivated and paid for her coding lessons. So yeah, it was something I've always been interested in, and that I decided, now would be a good time to kind of do the research and get it out. And it seems like Chris Tucker is an enabler of two of the biggest, most notorious sexual predators of minors in the past 100 years. He definitely has enabled both of them to, get away with their crimes. And we both know that it was actually Gavin Arvizo. So Gavin Arvizo was the second victim, or the second public victim of Michael Jackson in 2005. And Gavin Arvizo was the person who introduced Chris Tucker to Michael Jackson. Gavin Arvizo knew Michael Jackson from, being a cancer patient and then he was at a comedy store where Chris Tucker was, and he told Chris Tucker he knew Michael Jackson. And eventually Gavin Arvizo introduces Chris Tucker to Michael Jackson, and they become friends. And Chris Tucker was on the Jay Leno show talking about what a great kid Gavin Arvizo was, how he introduced him to Michael Jackson, how he loved him. And then
let me stop you there for a second, because people should check this out on Casey Gain on YouTube, the Chris Tucker, Michael Jackson, Jeffrey Epstein connection, because you see an interview of Chris Tucker. Who was that? Jay Leno on the Tonight Show. And I had not known how close Chris Tucker was to Gavin Arvizo. Where Gavin Arvizo was on the set of that Rush Hour movie and stuff like that, and running on screen. They were and calling each other up on the phone. Very unusual that his relationship was so intimate with this young Gavin Arvizo. I had known about the
right. I think Chris Tucker might have even had a son Gavin's age, so it might have been a little less inappropriate than Michael's relationship with him. But no, he knew the family very well. He said he would give them money. His wife wrote the most horrible, open letter against the Arvizo family, saying how they were bashing Michael Jackson and how they were, greedy and liars and all sorts of stuff. And Chris Tucker even testified. He was Michael Jackson's star witness at the Gavin Arvizo trial. He basically said, the family's all greedy liars. Gavin Arvizo is a cunning, smart, devious kid who wants money. So it was a lot of victim blaming that he did. So, and of course he flew Gavin Arvizo to Miami right after the Martin Bashir documentary aired, right when Michael Jackson was beginning to be investigated for child molestation after that documentary. Chris Tucker flew Gavin Arvizo on his private jet to Miami, where Michael Jackson was staying with Al Melnick, who we'll get into later. And during this time, Michael Jackson would give Gavin Arvizo wine and molest him, according to Gavin Arvizo. So you would have to think that Chris Tucker, he's supplying Michael Jackson with teenage boys so Michael Jackson could sexually molest. So he has to be some sort of an enabler and protector and some sort of, not a kind of mini pimp for Michael Jackson, helping him, procure these boys and, staying friends with Gavin Arvizo for all this time.
Outrageous conduct there, in my opinion. And also, too, then we know later on it came out that Chris Tucker was on the plane, on Jeffrey Epstein's plane, with Kevin Spacey and Bill Clinton. And also, too, you mentioned Ron Burkle. Yeah.
And Ron Burkle. And so Michael Jackson also knew Jeffrey Epstein, and according to Bradley Edwards in his book, Bradley Edwards was the lawyer for Virginia Giuffre and a number of other Epstein victims. But he said that one of Epstein's victims saw Michael Jackson at Jeffrey Epstein's Palm Beach mansion, and he was a visitor there. So Michael Jackson also had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. His name was in Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book. Of course, we know Michael Jackson to be interested in younger males, prepubescent males, while Jeffrey Epstein was into post-pubescent minor females. So they had a different interest and taste. But I don't know if Jeffrey Epstein was, he was also hanging around with Kevin Spacey, and Kevin Spacey likes post-pubescent, not little boys, like teenage boys. See, I think there's different types. Michael is like a pedophile, like he likes them prepubescent. And then I think like Kevin Spacey, R. Kelly, Bill Clinton, Epstein, they like post-pubescent. They like them, but not legal or not, still minors. So it's interesting. I don't know if Jeffrey Epstein was in any way facilitating Kevin Spacey's sexual needs or Chris Tucker's or Michael Jackson's sexual needs. Because there's definitely pictures of Chris Tucker with Shantae Davies and other people on the plane. And what was really funny is Shantae Davies comes and says, no, Chris Tucker's not a molester. I didn't see any sexual activity on the plane. People act like the plane was like an orgy hotspot. The plane was where you brought the girls to the hotels. Like, you're not going to be on the Mile High Club letting some girl give you a sexual act while you're sitting next to Bill Clinton. You're just going to hang out with the girls there. You'll probably be nice and cool. There's a pilot on there. There's stewardesses. Most people don't like having sex in public.
Yeah.
And if you want to maybe join the Mile High Club, you go to the bathroom.
Yeah, Casey, the flight logs are a good source of names associated with Epstein. But if you look at one of the previous lawsuits, and I think it was a Boyce or Davis, Brad Davis lawsuit against Dershowitz, there's a chart in there, okay, and I've copied this chart and I've posted it, that shows where all the really criminal activities were taking place, and the majority were in Palm Beach, Florida, and New York City. Very little was going on the island, okay, and some was going on over there in New Mexico at Zorro Ranch, and then other places in Europe and things like that. But the great majority of these crimes are taking place in Palm Beach and New York City. And again, too, the Michael Jackson connections to all this, too. He was very close to Donald Trump. And Trump's kids talk about playing with Michael Jackson when they were little kids.
Yep. Yeah, and there's another fascinating character, Al Malnick, and of course, Trump is famously tied to Roy Cohn, and Roy Cohn's famously tied to the mafia, and I think Roy Cohn is also tied to Meyer Lansky as well, and Al Malnick was Michael Jackson's benefactor after the before and during the second molestation trial. So Chris Tucker was friends with this guy, Brett Ratner. Brett Ratner is a director, originally of music videos, but then he went on to do like Rush Hour 2, he did an X-Men movie, he did a Hannibal Lecter movie, and then he got charged with sexual harassment during the Me Too, and he's been very quiet ever since. But Brett Ratner would always brag about being friends with Meyer Lansky when he was a kid, and he would also brag about his friend Al Malnick. Now, Al Malnick has never been convicted of being involved in organized crime, but he's been investigated for being involved in organized crime, and Reader's Digest called him the heir apparent to Meyer Lansky. So he's been involved in a lot of financial loaning type, shady type, semi-legal businesses. But he was a super rich billionaire. He owned the Forge nightclub, was a really popular nightclub in Miami. And Brett Ratner brings Michael Jackson to his house. Michael Jackson says, wow, this is the most beautiful house. Al Malnick says, hey, why don't you stay here? So Al Malnick stays. I think he becomes godfather to one of Michael's children. Mike might have been godfather to one of his kids. They become great friends. But then Mike starts to believe that Al Malnick is plotting against Michael to take his really valuable Sony ATV publishing catalog, which contains a lot of Beatles songs and lots of other popular songs. So it's like $1 billion catalog. So a lot of people have been fighting for this Michael Jackson catalog. One was Al Malnick, and another was Ron Burkle, who was introduced to Michael Jackson by Jesse Jackson, who is definitely a Fed and a shady character. And I don't know why he's introducing Ron Burkle to Michael Jackson. And Ron Burkle becomes like Michael Jackson's financial advisor. And I think initially during the trial, Michael Jackson had foreclosed his money to rap executive Damon Dash's brother, Darian Dash. So there was he was in super big debt, and I think Burkle helped bail him out of the debt. And Burkle actually just bought Neverland 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So and Burkle was he was on the same flight as Chris Tucker and Jeffrey Epstein to Africa. Virginia Dufresne named Burkle as one of the people, along with Ghislaine Maxwell, who had full knowledge of Epstein's sex trafficking. He, of course, was in Epstein's Black Book. There was a big scandal around Ron Burkle, again, with Clinton, another person who was involved with Epstein. In a very similar scandal, they had a plane they called Air FUC-1, used with the word of fornicating, the word I can't say on the air that means to fornicate. And there was several women on these planes were saying that Bill Clinton was sexually assaulting these young women on these planes, and they might come forward. So Ron Burkle was very similar to Jeffrey Epstein in terms of he had a nice big plane, a Boeing, which is like a passenger jet. So it's not like a little private plane you fly around. It's a big ass plane where. Yeah, I can say that one.
A couple of things about Burkle. I would encourage people to check out an article by Mark Ebner called The Ham Whisperer, and the interview I did with Mark Ebner about Burkle and some of his shady friends and stuff like that are in that article. Also, too, I've been speaking, I told you off the air, and spent a lot of time this week talking to Maria Farmer. And she is adamant that Bill Clinton was not into underage. Okay, and I got to tell you, man, my own, I've interviewed all those rape victims with Clinton and all those people. The impression, and even girlfriends of his that had nice romantic relationships with Clinton were happy with him, that didn't believe he was a horrible person. And I think the whole portrayal of Clinton as this sexual aggressive, voracious sexual appetite was created by Kellyanne Conway's husband and Ann Coulter and Kavanaugh back in those days.
I don't think so. If you go back to like the 80s and where he was involved in the kind of
Paula Jones,
the narco trafficking, Iran Contra. Paula Jones and all those women. But there were even like There were underage sex parties. I think there was a woman involved in, and I forget her name, Charlene something, but she claimed that Bill Clinton was around young women. My thing is, I'm not sure if he has an appetite, but I think he can't say no. I think he's easily corrupted. I think, Monica Lewinsky wasn't necessarily underage, but she was young, and she wasn't the most attractive woman in the world, but she was there. And you've seen some of the other women. I think Bill Clinton is a man who's easily tempted and easily corrupted and easily manipulated. Now, I'm sure the CIA, manipulated him a long time ago when he was working for them at Oxford, and they knew some type of sexual deviance from him there. But I don't. So I even think with what Epstein was doing is he had young girls who looked like they could be 20 or they could be 15 and you wouldn't know. So and then he would kind of tell you, hey, no, she's not 20, she's 15. Like Virginia, she was 17 when she was doing these things. So I think a lot of women that Bill Clinton would have sex with, most men would have sex with unless they knew they were underage. So I don't think he's necessarily attracted. I think he's attracted to women. I think most men like young women between the age of 20 and 25 is a good window. Maybe not mentally, maybe not for relationships for older men, and especially it's complicated when you have older men in power and young, attractive 25-year-olds and 20-year-olds. But I think Bill Clinton is a greedy. Horny.
But I got to tell you, I think after his heart surgery, that his interest in sex at all diminished incredibly, and this comes from a lot of people, man. The Secret Service, but anyway, I know that's an unpopular opinion.
I don't know because even during 2016, you had Colin Powell talking about how maybe this could have been a setup, could have been a frame, could have been trying to help out Barack Obama very much so, how that Clinton was still running around having sex with lots of women, and that was going to bring Hillary down. That was like an off-the-record comment by Colin Powell. So I don't know.
Yeah.
They knew he was a liability. Like the same sex scandal that ruined Gary Webb was able to elevate Bill Clinton to a position of power and even sympathy.
No, wait, not Gary Webb. You're thinking of the other guy, Gary.
Yeah. Oh, with on the monkey boat.
Yeah,
what's his name?
The guy
Not Gary Webb.
Yeah, I know. You had me there for a minute. Says Gary Webb had a sex act?
Not Gary. Yeah, Gary Webb was, of course.
I know the guy running for president.
The Dark Alliance. Yeah, and exposed the CIA's crack running operation in California. Gary, what's his last name? It was he had Donna something. He had a very attractive women. And she was just sitting on his lap. It was nothing as bad as she didn't say she had sex with him. It was just one picture, and that picture totally derailed his campaign. Yet numerous allegations against Bill Clinton did nothing to him, because I think he's definitely been like a chosen one from
Gary
the
Hart.
Gary Hart.
Yeah, I remember that. I was
that ruined him. Yeah, no, Gary Hart had a good campaign going, and then with the one little picture with a woman, and that ruined it. Meanwhile, Bill Clinton had 5-6 accusations of not just affairs, but sexual assault.
Really quick, because if you check out Casey Gain on YouTube here, the Chris Tucker, Michael Jackson, Jeffrey Epstein connection, he told Gary, who's that guy? The friend who was the movie producer. Who rode it was staying at Michael Jackson. It was staying at Neverland, and they rode in the limousine in the middle of the night, and they threw water balloons at homeless people.
Oh, Brett Ratner. That was Brett Ratner. So yeah, Brett Ratner was Chris Tucker's friend, and Chris Tucker introduced Brett Ratner to Michael Jackson, and Brett Ratner introduced Michael Jackson to Al Malnick. Yeah, so that was a horrible incident. It kind of shows you. I know we talked off the record about a similar incident.
Right.
Michael was involved.
Yeah, we did. Right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, you want to know what? I found out more since then too, because that high school where Michael Jackson and Christian Brando went to, and along with another fellow, where they went to that school, that was the school that was based the book Less Than Zero was based on.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Bret Easton, yeah.
Right, and if you read the book, they were taken to see a snuff film. Okay. And the stories going around back then is that Michael Jackson and Christian Brando would drive around and shoot paintball guns and water pistols at homeless people in the streets from their cars. And who knows what else. So there was that. But by the way, real quick, too, you were talking about Neverland, too, and it just came out recently about how the Menendez's father is getting sued for suing one of the Menudo kids, right?
Yeah, there was a documentary on Peacock about it. He was definitely... and I think he might have been molesting the brothers as well, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have information. I worked on a job authenticating some information that came out in these documentaries, these Michael Jackson documentaries. And what we found out at the time was, from Michael Jackson's private investigators, his former private investigators, was that an architect who worked for Michael Jackson used to bring the Menendez, he was friends with the Menendez father, and he would bring the Menendez boys over to Neverland, too.
Oh, yeah. Was this Pelicano?
No, I've never spoken to Pelicano.
No, it was different. So Pelicano was one of Michael Jackson's investigators too, right?
Yeah, and he quit saying that if people knew what Michael Jackson was really up to, they would be horrified. It's way worse than molestation, is what he said.
Yeah.
Interesting too. You mentioned Gordon Novell is involved in all this. Well, why don't you tell us, who is Gordon Novell?
You probably could tell me better too. I know he was involved in the JFK assassination. There was a very famous call between him and Nip Tuck and Dave Emery. There's a great phone call where Gordon Novell is randomly driving through California, and here's yeah. So, but he's a weird CIA type spy, but I think he was working for Michael Jackson as well, and he investigated Al Malnick, who Michael Jackson was living with, and he basically said that Michael Jackson thought that Al Malnick was trying to steal his Beatles catalog for the mob. Like, Al Malnick was representative of the greater crime syndicate, the kind of extended Meyer Lansky, Lucky Luciano family. And I think when we have people like Maria Farmer, they refer to it as a Jewish mob, but it's still very much the mob. They still work with Italians and other people. Of course, they have their little ethnic enclaves, and you might have your Italian crime families and your Jewish crime syndicates. But the Italian mob works very closely with the Jewish mobs to this day. One of Les Wexner's close associates was Edward J. D. Bartolo, and he owned the 49ers, but he was also named the heir apparent to Meyer Lansky, just like Al Malnick, Michael Jackson's friend, was named the heir apparent to Meyer Lansky. So we kind of see this mafia syndicates coming together around Michael Jackson, both and Chris Tucker, both through Jeffrey Epstein and through Michael Jackson's friend Al Malnick, and kind of influence that these kind of old gangsters still have on society today. With, Wexner and Malnick being extremely rich, powerful, influential people who can make friends with powerful people like Michael Jackson and Bill Clinton.
I just want to say real quick about Maria Farmer and these allegations of anti-Semitism, which I too believed years ago. I've spent a lot of time talking to her the past week. She's got a new several TikTok channels where she comes out now and addresses this. That recorded interview was never supposed to be played on the air. It was all off the record kind of stuff.
Oh, the Whitney Webb one?
Yes.
Whitney Webb threw under the bus? Oh, Whitney. Whitney. I got so much love for Whitney.
Well, there's a lot of lawsuits in the background.
I know you guys have problems.
Yeah. And let me tell you something. Nice. She's very upset about that. She's part Jewish herself. She was really close.
Okay.
Yeah, she was intimately close, not intimately romantically, but so close with Stephen Hoffenberg. They were on the phone several times a day.
Okay.
Yeah, which I believe, because once you get on in her loop, you're on the phone with her 10 times a day. Very nice woman, and she's got a lot of information, man. She talks about how
I think
Bezos was dating Maxwell for 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah, man. She's got a ton of information, I'm telling you, that is kind of being controlled and manipulated out there.
I feel like I'm not racist, but I know there are black organized crime members. You have Bloods, Crips, they're higher levels. I'm not anti-Italian, but I know there's an Italian mafia, and I think a lot of people don't know that there is a Jewish mafia, and I think that the Jewish mafia has done a lot better job than the Italian mafia or the Bloods and the Crips in terms of putting up a front of respectability and of legality. But I think definitely, there are evil people, and there are Jewish supremacists, there are black supremacists, white supremacists. There's bad people from all kinds of groups. And I do feel like even black people will say if you criticize any black person that you're a racist, and they'll stop you from any critiquing of black people. There was, I don't know if you watched the TV series on the making of The Godfather, which was all about Joe Colombo was raging against The Godfather, against it being racist and portraying Italians as mafia. Meanwhile, he's the big mafia kingpin, and he's upset that this movie and book is portraying Italians as gangsters. Meanwhile, he's the biggest gangster out there. So I think. And I do understand that when ways, especially with criminality and especially with stereotypes of Jewish people being greedy or crooked or criminal, when you just focus on these evil people, or you just focus on black drug dealers, or just focus on corrupt Jewish lawyers and Bernie Madoff types, where people kind of get a bit racist. But you also have to notice that these people do exist. And you have to point them out there, and I think when you use racism, anti-Semitism, or anything like that, you're just going to cloud your judgment, and you're not going to get to the real problem. You're going to wind up blaming the nice Jewish person at the supermarket for the Illuminati controlled by George Soros.
or even myself, I'll do an interview, and I'll see in the comments on YouTube that he's a Jew this, he's a Jew that. I'm not even Jewish. I'm not even.
Man, your name sounds a little Jewish.
And I guess my voice too, and my memory. Yeah. But back
you're very New York, and you're kind of you're old New York, and that's the people are old New York too.
If you would have heard my accent back when I lived in New York back before 2000, or back in the 80s, you wouldn't forget it. And there are some recordings out there of me. We have to dig them up. But Gordon Novell claims that he's the one that installed those microphones in the White House. Okay, that he on a contract for the White House. And he had
Watergate?
The Butterfield tapes that were in there. Gordon Novell says he designed that system to be installed into the White House. He also says that he could not have been involved in the JFK assassination because he was having sex with Elizabeth Taylor that day. Okay? Now, when I tried to interview Gordon Novell, and I got him on the phone, okay, he wanted to talk about free energy. He wanted me to invest with him, free energy. Okay? So he was, toward the end of his life, he was on this, I got to call it a con or a scam, raising money for this free energy with these UFO types. which is what he was doing at the end. But now that I've heard through you that he was involved in this whole Michael Jackson investigation, that makes a lot of sense. Because during that whole thing with Arvizo, that case with Arvizo, it came out that where the reporters would go and have their smoke break, they found recording devices there.
Oh, yeah.
And I talked to Baresi about this. I talked to other people who were involved in that case, and I said, hey, well, you know what? Did you plant those recorders there? They didn't know anything about it. So it would make sense that Gordon Novell would have done that. So that's another interesting thing here.
And obviously Michael Jackson was a child molester, but that documentary was like, that was the worst thing you could have ever done. Like if you're a child molester, like have a little boy holding your hand and laying on you and talking about how you sleep in the same bed with her. So I don't know who Michael Jackson's handlers were at the time, but they could have been trying to get him to at least be broke and sell that Beatles catalog. So he could have been right about Malik conspiring against him. But I definitely don't think that anyone had to make up anything about Michael being a pedophile. He's pretty flagrant about it.
Well, don't forget too, his Thriller tour was promoted by Al Sharpton and Michael Franzese.
Right.
This is before the Jordy Chandler accusations came out, and I was told by a driver on that tour that he was caught with little boys on that tour, and it was covered up. Okay, and this is before anything in the press about this. And when I heard about this, I says, oh boy, we should sell this to the Inquirer. This is a great story. We should sell it. And they said, no way. These are dangerous people. We're not getting involved in any of these people. So he's always had these shady, dangerous people around him, you know?
And this is so after Michael Jackson breaks with Al Malnick and starts blaming him for helping Tommy Mottola, that's when he brings Al Sharpton back in and they start talking about how Sony's racist. I mean, Michael Jackson changed his skin color, didn't really do much for any black activism his whole life. But then these people start messing with his money a little bit, and now it's all about racism. I mean, and definitely, I don't know if it was racism. I think it was just the mafia doing what the mafia does. The mafia's been in the music business for years. They realize how valuable publishing rights are. You guys have guys like Morris Levy. He was stealing publishing rights for years, and a huge figure in the mafia, Morris Levy. And I've also seen pictures with I don't know if you're familiar with this guy Clarence Avant, who is a kind of black figure in the mafia connected to Morris Levy, and he's known as like the Black Godfather. But he's also close with Brett Ratner. But he's definitely a seminal old school organized crime figure, and I think his wife was recently assassinated in his house maybe a couple of years ago. And he's 70 something.
Well, if you go back,
that's another Brett Ratner connection.
If you go back and read the old Al Sharpton Smoking Gun documents on smokinggun.com, it talks about his initial contact with the FBI was collecting money, debts owed in the music industry. He was out there a bill collector and setting up cases on people.
Yep.
Yeah. What a bunch. Well,
this is such a crazy bunch of, I don't know. These are the people like the CIA and the FBI decide need to be in power, that need to be on TV, that need to, And I think there was also a crazy story about, also during the 80s, in which the FBI was investigating Michael Jackson for child molestation. And he visited the Bush White House.
Oh, really?
And that kind of wiped everything out. Like, I'm not sure if Al Sharpton was. I know Al Sharpton brought Coretta Scott King to the Bush White House.
Well, no, she brought to the convention and sat in Bush's box at the Republican convention by way of Al Sharpton, like you said. And he also, too, he took a dive for Al D'Amato to take office over there, too, as well.
Well, and again, Al's definitely mob tied up, very much so. We see with Michael Franzese, in terms of his interests for his whole career, and it's so funny. He talks about how he was a good Samaritan who decided to be a superhero and tell on the mob. I'd love to tell on the mob too. I don't want the mob to. I can't tell the mob anything. I can't tell on the mob because I don't know what the mob does. The mob isn't going to call me up and say, "Hey, Casey, we're selling drugs, we're doing this." Your average person is not going to be able to tell on the mob unless they're in the mob.
Yeah. Yeah, but by the way, too, the Village Voice did a great series of articles on Al Sharpton and the GOP, and he would say himself. I know we've talked about Al Sharpton so many times on here, but he would say himself when he would run for mayor or something like that, and lose, but split the Democratic vote. He would say, "Well, I achieved everything I wanted to," you know. So he's one of those guys.
Yeah.
So,
but no, this is, and now. I think the kind of convergence is again what you have with Les Wexner and Jeffrey Epstein. Also to, like I talked earlier about Edward J. Bartolo, and there was a famous murder of a lawyer called Arthur Shapiro. Now this file has been destroyed. And I think there was a police captain who was fired, but he kept the files, and then Les Wexner is so powerful in Ohio, he appoints the police chiefs. Right. So he had the police chief kind of destroy all these files, but there's a good journalist, Bob Fitzrockis, actually reached out to the old police chief who still had the files, and you see Les Wexner being super tied to Meyer Lansky, Edward Dorpolo, another guy named Jim Walsh. So again, it's still the mob. It's the Irish mob, it's the Jewish mob, it's the Italian mob, all still working together in whatever fields they have, and some of them are elevated, some of them are still involved in street crime, some of them are involved in corporate crime, some are involved in sexual blackmail, which goes back to kind of the whole sexual blackmail thing also goes back to Meyer Lansky. Meyer Lansky famously sexually blackmailed J. Edgar Hoover.
Yeah, Gordon Novell claims to be involved in that too. He said he had those photos as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gordon Novell was an interesting character. I would have loved to really get Gordon Novell on the show and really talk to him, but all he wanted to talk about was this free energy crap.
Well, you should do that and then use that part at the second end, or just
let
him talk about that and edit it. Oh, he's dead. When did he die?
Oh, he died a few years ago. A good 5 years ago. Yeah.
Oh, that sucks. That sucks.
I know it sucks. I mean, he worked for Ramsey Clark. Gordon Novell was a real guy. He was a real legit guy. He was out there doing stuff. Yeah.
So again, it's interesting with Michael Jackson. Was he being sexually blackmailed as well? It would be pretty easy to sexually blackmail Michael Jackson, you would think, especially if you were in, he brings him to the Miami home. And so all these people like Jeffrey Epstein and everything, they have their cameras everywhere. Even Michael Jackson had his cameras everywhere. So Michael Jackson is molesting this kid in Al Malnick's home. And Al Malnick is a disciple of Meyer Lansky, who's known for his sexual blackmail. If you really wanted these Beatles catalog for Michael Jackson, and he's having this little boy over his house and he's molesting him, all you got to do is take a picture of it right there and you say, hey, I want your Beatles catalog, or else I'm going to show these pictures to the world.
And Brett Ratner purchased Neverland?
Not Brett Ratner.
Who was
Ron Burkle.
Oh, Ron Burkle purchased.
Ron Burkle purchased Neverland at I think it was worth $100 million. He bought it for 20. Because it's such a stained, the legacy of if you want, you don't want to buy a haunted house where people were killed, and you don't want to buy a haunted ranch where children were molested.
Well, there's a lot of shady stuff. There's a lot of shady stuff that's going on down the Virgin Islands too, with those settlements down there too as well.
Oh yeah.
It was based on $85,000 worth of the sale of Epstein's island and mansion down there, and they only obtained half of that. There's that. Then this whole thing about some of this money from these bank lawsuits is going to recruiters, to women that were Epstein recruiters, not actual victims. Okay.
Well, there was a thing that he turned his victims into recruiters as well. Exactly. So it's hard to say.
Yeah. And then the other one was this whole thing about the Butterfly Trust. Darren Endyke and Richard Kahn, the two lawyers and accountants for Epstein, way back from Tower Financial days, were managing the trust down there, right? They were the executors of the trust. They set up companies in their wife's name called the Butterfly Trust and paid themselves $10 million. No conviction on that whatsoever. And because money's being spread around, man. This money's being spread, man. It's being cut up, and not to the victims.
Wasn't one of the attorney general fired too? The previous attorney general who was trying to sue them for the Virgin Islands, I think she was fired.
Denise George was fired over the Christmas vacation, and the theory was that you saw, and I hate this crap. You see this big story with these idiots on TikTok and stuff like that talking about how Joe Biden went down there on vacation, and as soon as he got down there, she got fired. They went down there for vacation every year, all the time, except for during COVID. They just had nothing to do with Joe Biden whatsoever. Now, I know the reason why she was fired. I'm not going to say it myself. I'm going to wait to see if it's okay to say it. But again, it had nothing to, and it was plaintiff's side that got her fired, not the defense side that got her fired. The people
it does sound to me a little reminiscent about when Bill Clinton met with what's her name randomly at the airport.
Right. Right. Well,
just randomly, but
that's a little different. Yeah. He met with the prosecutor, prosecuting his wife during the campaign. Yeah. And I forgot all about that, man.
And I mean, if you think about it, like a number of the people that this prosecutor would not be his wife, Joe Biden, for I think it's one of the few saving graces of Joe Biden that he wasn't in Epstein's black book. He probably has his own network. But who knows what was going on with Hunter? How they didn't get Hunter on that black book?
Yeah, I know.
I wonder how come. Like Epstein must have been slipping if he didn't catch Hunter as someone that he could easily sexually blackmail.
Well, because the FSB was doing it. Now, did I send you all that clip of all the interviews I did about Hunter Biden?
No, I know.
Okay.
Send them.
I'll send it to you again. I apologize. All the interviews I did with guys like Bradley Birkenfeld and all this stuff like that about the Hunter Biden laptop that came out of Keith Ablow's house, okay? Yeah. Dr. Keith Ablow, because Hunter Biden went
his psychiatrist, we talked about it
Right,
before.
I told you about that, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've been talking to Lev Parnas lately, okay? And as a matter of fact, just last night, he sent me a link to an interview he did in a local Miami TV station. Now, he's got all kind of text messages between himself and DeSantis, okay? All right? And Giuliani, getting Giuliani to tweet about DeSantis and all this kind of stuff like that. Lev Parnas did an interview with Michael Cohen, and Michael Cohen can't get nothing out of this guy, but he's begging to talk. The guy's dying to talk. Lev Parnas says that when he was working for Giuliani, that Giuliani's publicist in Ukraine is the one who got Hunter Biden the job over at Burisnov. Rudy is responsible for getting him that job. And then the Russian FSB would take Hunter Biden and say, let's go to Kazakhstan. We got women for you. We got drugs for you. And they would go there and film all this. And then they were putting it on these laptops out there. I don't think there's anyone out there that really has been doing the kind of laptop work that I've been doing. I've been talking to people who examined it. Patrick Berge was on my show. He was at Rudy Giuliani's house, apartment in New York City, authenticating the laptop. They wanted him to get passwords in there to get more information out. A couple of days later, FBI goes in, Department of Justice goes in and raids Rudy Giuliani. They take all his phones, all his electronics, except for the Hunter Biden laptop.
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
And you can't. I think you can't even post like a picture of like the Hunter Biden laptop on like Instagram or anything, and they will say this is like from a hack material.
Forget it. That first.
I don't think it was.
When those videos first came out, man, forget it. You could watch for 10 seconds. You had to download it, otherwise they were gone.
Yeah.
What a. We only got about 5 minutes left, man. I apologize. I monopolized.
No, it's been a great combo. I definitely talked about everything I wanted to talk about, and I learned a lot more too, which was great, and hopefully the public did too.
So Casey Gain, you could find him on YouTube here at the Casey Gain YouTube channel. Now, wasn't there another name for this podcast though too? Reality?
No, it's always been Reality Theory.
And so you can find it also too on the podcast platforms. Which ones?
No, not one. Remember, you're supposed to. I was supposed to send you all my stuff, and I never did.
Okay, well, anytime you want, we can still do that. No problem with that. Chris,
yeah, I still got them all.
The Chris Tucker. I know. Maybe in case again, we're gonna have a complete a sentence here. We're gonna go to a project together, right? Okay. The Chris Tucker, Michael Jackson, Jeffrey Epstein connection. I really encourage people to check this out, and also to check out Casey Gain's book, The CIA's Secret War in Jamaica. And you'll watch these kind of things like this HBO Watergate thing. You'll watch it with a different eye. When you see what. By the way, too, in the Watergate thing, they talk about how they sent Che Guevara's hands to Liddy, but it wasn't Liddy. It was somebody else, right?
I thought it was Angleton. Well, Felix Rodriguez is the ones who really had him, but I thought it was Angleton. I thought they said James Jesus Angleton because he was at the club with them.
Yeah, I never heard that.
I thought it was Angleton.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought it was Felix Rodriguez, but I think it might have changed hands a few times.
I know, isn't that something? Maybe imagine that. Yeah, what a bunch of
Felix
sick.
Rodriguez, the psycho. Oh
Yeah,
my
right,
God.
sick character. And like you said, Felix Rodriguez.
I would love to have an Iran Contra version like this the Plumbers
Yeah,
series.
right.
Like, yeah, it was
Because that's great. Because if
all
you ever
from
listen,
North, yeah.
yeah, because when it was going on live in real time, they were talking about all those guys, Diva and them, and Ollie North. They were all addicted to Valium, you know. And if they're texting each other, sending messages back and forth, talking about they just took 20 Valium. Okay, you know, they were all like abusing these Valiums, man. It was insane. So they had to be using coke too, in my opinion, because why use one without the other? Let's see. All right. Let's see how we're doing on time. We have 53 minutes. Casey Gain Magala. What do you want to leave us with?
Yeah, definitely check out my video so you can catch all the video in real time. I also have an interesting story about how I was bullied online by a fake white Afro-Latina agent provocateur. That's a good one. And another recent video about the AI commandments. But definitely check out Reality Theory if you like what's going on in the subject on the Ed Opperman show. You will also like the subject matter of Reality Theory. And yeah, definitely check out Reality Theory on my YouTube channel, Casey Game. This is my 10th episode, so that's kind of a hallmark. Last 3 episodes have been doing good, getting good views, so I'm excited about that. And so I'd like to thank everyone for their support and ask people who aren't supporting to support.
Yeah, definitely quality work, and I would encourage people to go back to the Opperman Report archives and check out all the previous interviews with Casey Gain. We'll start off in one place, and we'll just go all over the place. An encyclopedia of knowledge, Casey Gain here. And I encourage people to, I always say this when you're on, to check out his Facebook too as well. He's got such a unique perspective on the world. Sort of like an anti-imperialist view that I really respect Casey, and I really appreciate it, man. And you always open up my eyes, you know, when you think you know what you're talking about, and then you see this different perspective. It's nice to have, my friend.
No, thanks, Ed.
No, thank you, sir. Casey Gain Magala. Check out Casey Gain, Conspiracy Realist, Conspiracy Reality.
Reality Theory.
Reality Theory. I'm sorry. Okay, you can find Casey Gain at all your local podcast platforms. Thank you so much, my friend.
All right, Ed.
Good night.